Well, you know, they say the full moon can affect some people. It certainly did me last night at my council meeting. I couldn't even pronounce my councillors' names properly, so I hope I fare better today. Jonathan, if you could do the attendance, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have all members in attendance today, and you have your quorum. Thank you.
Is there anybody that needs to leave early today? Councillor Laux.
Yes, I need to be out by noon.
By noon?
I'm sure we'll be fine.
Councillor Burkett?
11:30.
11:30. Councillor Miskimins?
11:30.
11:30 as well. Looking at, go ahead, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. 12 noon as well.
12 noon as well, so okay. Looking at the agenda, it's a heavy agenda, but I think we'll be out of here by then. Oh, I shouldn't say things like that, I guess. So, yeah, I'll mute myself and I'll turn it over to Councillor Dolan for the approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Norcross that the agenda for March the 26th, 2024 meeting of County Council be approved.
Everybody's heard the motion. Any questions arising from the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Not seeing any. If you find yourself in that situation, please declare at that time. Presentations and deputations, we have none. So for the consent agenda, Councillor Burkett.
Thank you, through Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Smith, that Council communications and proclamations March the 12th, 2024 to March the 25th, 2024 having given due consideration be received.
Thank you. And you'll notice in the proclamations there's one recognizing volunteer ism across this county. I'll tell you, if it's anything like our small municipality, and certainly here at Simcoe County, we can't do enough to support and thank our volunteers. They really are an integral part of many of the functions that we deliver. So for heartfelt thank you to all those people that dedicate thousands of hours of time. And that will come up in our committee report where you'll see how many hours some of these folks are actually putting in. So with that, I will turn it over to Deputy Warden Coughlin for council minutes.
Good morning, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Laux, that the following council and minutes be confirmed and adopted, and Committee of the Whole reports be confirmed. County Council minutes of March 12, 2024, Committee of the Whole report March 12, 2024, and Committee of the Whole confidential report March 12, 2024.
On those minutes, any questions arising from the minutes? So all in favor? Thank you. That is carried. And presentations and considerations of the Committee of the Whole reports. Chair Cox.
Good morning. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Evans, that the performance management recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated March 12, 2024, including the confidential item, be approved.
Any issues with performance management? Any items to be pulled? Not seeing any. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And now Chair Leduc, Human Services.
Thank you, Warden. We're at 9.2 of the Committee Whole report. It's Human Services. That moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that the Human Services recommendations contained within the Committee of Whole report dated March 12, 2024 be approved.
Any items on Human Services that need to be pulled for further discussion? I'm not seeing any, so all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And Chair Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Measures that the Corporate Services recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated March 12, 2024 be approved.
Any items to be pulled from corporate? Not seeing any, so all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Presentations of special committee reports, we have none, but we do have one county officer's report today. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder that item CO 2024-094 dated March 26, 2024 regarding the Community Paramedicine Home Visit Program be received, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to authorize the Warden and the County Clerk to enter into the County of Simcoe and Ministry of Long-Term Care Transfer Payment Agreement for transfer to Community Paramedicine Long-Term Care Program funding, and that the Warden and County Clerk be authorized to execute and any other related agreements that may come forward as part of the Community Paramedicine Long-Term Care Program funding. Moved by Councillor Fryer, second by Councillor Brian Smith. Jane, anything you want to add to this?
Through your Warden, just very exciting to see the extension of this program. We're very, very pleased. It's been operating very well, so we're looking forward to continuing to grow this program over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the floor? Not seeing any. All in favor? That is carried. Motions of which notice isn't given, we have none. Notices of motion, none that I'm aware of. Closed session, none. So we're on to consideration of the bills with Councillor Norcross.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Burkett, that bills number 706524, 7066-24 be enacted as bylaws of the County of Simcoe.
Any questions on the bills? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now, announcements. Just a reminder that our next County Committee of the Whole meeting on April 9th has been rescheduled to begin later in the morning at 11 a.m. to allow many of us have been invited to Vimy Ridge for the morning event at the base, and also the Economic Subcommittee meeting that day has been canceled, and I know the chair was made aware of that. So that way we can make it over to Vimy Ridge and still be back in time for our meeting. Any other announcements? Yes, Councillor Measures.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good morning, members of council. I do have a brief announcement just to remind members and the public that April is recognized as Be a Donor Month, which is in recognition of organ donation and tissue donation in Ontario. Green ribbons are worn to recognize this effort and to bring awareness to the program. And of course, we always encourage people to visit beadonor.ca, which is the website to properly register your intentions to be a donor for the program. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I also have two other quick ones for the mayor of Springwater Township. I understand you have your Maple Syrup Festival underway, and I do know that Deputy Mayor Van Stavern from Clearview Township has put together a team. So he's issuing a challenge, Madam Mayor, so I hope that you have an excellent festival over there for the Maple Syrup Festival. And also, Your Worship, it is, of course, Junior C hockey playoff season. The Stainer Siskins have once again entered the championship round against the Alliston Hornets. My colleague, the mayor of New Tecumseh, will, of course, be wearing the Stainer Siskins jersey at his council meeting at the conclusion of this championship round. It is the third year in a row that the Siskins and the Hornets have met each other, but I do want to acknowledge right across Simcoe County we have a lot of great Junior C hockey teams and people that are involved in Junior C hockey. So we wish the Siskins very well in this tournament.
All right. I did see the jersey. I wondered if you were going to go there. Go ahead, Councillor Norcross.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. But in all fairness, it was Deputy Mayor Stephanie McClellan that had to stand there with his flag at the Mayor's Council desk. So I just wanted to point that out.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Warden. I'd just like to say thank you so much for the county members from the Age Friendly that came to our first annual Seniors Connect Fair. It was a huge success, and we had a lot of fun, so thanks so very much. And thank you, Jane.
Any other announcements? Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. Last Thursday, on behalf of AMO, I attended a pre-budget announcement with Ministers Surma, Bethenfalvey, and MPP Parza and the Premier in Richmond Hill to announce some more infrastructure dollars for municipalities. So there was $600 million new dollars in the housing enabling water fund. It was at $200 million, so adding 600 is now at $800 million, and $1 billion in the infrastructure fund, not tied to housing pledges or anything like that, just $1 billion in that fund. No details yet. I'm hoping today, later on in the provincial budget, we'll hear more details. I believe it's application based, but that's all I know at this point. And then also at the AMO board meeting last week, the board directed staff to sign the 10-year Canada Community Building Fund. If you've been around here for a while, you'll have known that as the gas tax. It's just the new name. In talking with my federal colleague from FCM, there's some disconnect in some province, like where it's good and bad in some provinces. In Ontario and BC, we have a direct relationship and a seat at the table with the way that the funding rolls out, and it all rolls out on a formula basis through AMO. They administer that. In every other provinces and territory except for BC, the money goes straight to the provincial government, and nobody knows there where how it's rolled out or what happens with it. So while some provinces are reluctant to get on board with it and want to see some changes, we were happy enough to go ahead and sign, and that's $8 billion over 10 years.
Good, good. Well-needed funds. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Warden. Just to piggyback on Lynn's comments, FCM does have the municipal framework completed. It's a 45-page document that isn't going to be released until I believe everything is signed and finalized. But when it is ready and comes out, I will bring it to the House. Good.
Thank you. Councillor Leduc.
Thank you, Warden. My announcement's not as exciting as that with the $1.8 billion announcement, but it's Purple Day today. March 26th is Purple Day, so if you can share purple today and express out there today about purple, and it's Epilepsy Month. March is Epilepsy Month, so the two go hand in hand. So just wanted to announce that today is Purple Day. So
thank you.
I see some of us wearing purple.
I guess I should have. I managed to sneak it in on the roll, but it wasn't on purpose. Any other announcements? Not seeing any, so I'll look for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Norcross.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Roshan. That bill, sorry, where am I? Confirmatory bylaw. The bill number 706724 be enacted as a bylaw of the County of Simcoe.
On the bylaw, all in favor? That is carried. And finally, our adjournment that the March 26, 2024 meeting of County Council be adjourned at 9:14. Moved by Councillor Measures, second by Councillor Fowler. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We'll get our city reps in here and roll right into our committee of the whole. Okay, good morning to our city reps, and I'll go back to my clerk for roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. In addition to those in attendance at Council, we're joined by City Reps Orillia Councillor Durnford, Orillia Councillor Fallis, Barrie Councillor Hamilton, Orillia Mayor McIsaac, Barrie Councillor Nagusi, Barrie Mayor Nuttall is absent, and Barrie Councillor Riepma is in attendance, and you have your quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for an approval of the agenda. Councillor Dolan.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Burkett and seconded by Councillor Mike Smith that the agenda for March 26, 2024 meeting of Committee of the Whole be approved.
Any questions arising from the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Not seeing any, but if you find yourself in that situation later, please declare at that time. And presentations and delegations, we have none. So we'll roll right into our agenda. Performance management with Chair Cox.
5.1 Simcoe County Archives operations in February 2024. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Norris, second by Councillor Keith Bell. Recommendation is that item CCW 2024-085 dated March 26, 2024 regarding Simcoe County Archives operations in February 2024 be received. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cox. Now we'll go on to Human Services, Chair Leduc.
Thank you, Warden. Welcome to our city reps. We're at Section 6, Human Services. We have a a big agenda here, but hopefully we'll get through this in no time. There's a lot of good news reports here. So we have the consent agenda. So I have it moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Snell, and it is the consent item that item CCW 2024-085 dated March 26, 2024 regarding Simcoe Archives. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry. Let's go back. The following consent item have been given due consideration be received. And it is a letter authored by Anne-Marie Kungle, Barry Councillor, that is looking at the nutritious food basket. A lot of support. Hey? No, it's just to receive this receive this item. So it's already went down to the Premier and everything, to the Deputy Premier and stuff like that. So okay. Any questions or concerns with it? Seeing none, all in favor of the consent item? Thank you. We are into 7, Human Services, Child Services. We are at 7.1. It is the CCW 2024-070, 2024 Licensed Child Care and Early Years System Funding Allocations. Question or concerns with this report? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Sandhu, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. And the recommendation is that item CCW 2024-070 dated March 26, 2024 regarding the county's provincial child care and early years funding allocation and related guidelines be received, and that the program strategies, guidelines, and approaches in conjunction with the 2024 service provider proposed funding allocations as generally outlined in item CCW 2024-070 as be approved, and that the staff maximize the 2024 provincial funding and redirect any year-end municipal savings to the social services reserve to help offset future year budget pressures. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're now on to item 8, Human Services Long-Term Care Committee of Management. I have 8.1, CCW 024 or 2024-81, Give a Lift Bus Fundraising Campaign. Moved by Councillor Fryer, seconded by Councillor Fowler. Question concerns with this report? It's a good one. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to add a note of appreciation to this report. Warden, you mentioned earlier about the volunteers and the commitment that we have at our long-term care facilities. And I know when I first got involved talking to the volunteers at Sunset Manor, this was a big deal for them. And they've been putting a lot of effort into it. Really thankful for the generous donation that came in to put us over the top. And again, appreciation to staff as well for their efforts. But it's something that the facility really needed. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fryer. You're absolutely right. It was a family that stepped up and put the schedule of the bus, purchasing the bus ahead. So it's nice to see a family step up and do that for our long-term care homes. So, okay, no further questions. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And moving on that theme, we have section 8.2, CCW 2024-090. It's a Simcoe Strong Volunteer Program. I'm going to turn this over to our General Manager, Jane St. Clair, for a few comments, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned by the Warden, our volunteers are simply a gift to all our long-term care and senior services, as well as the museum across the road. We're very, very fortunate to have such dedication and commitment in long-term care and senior services. It's 6,900 hours. That's over 3.5 full-time positions. If you translate that, it is tremendous support for our long-term care and senior services, and close to 2,000 in the museum. So we are most grateful and very, very appreciative. It's a privilege to honor them through this report. And as mentioned, there are events happening in each of the locations. We've included the dates, and you're more than welcome to join and help us celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Further comments or questions on this? It's good to see, I think Councillor Fryer picked up on a little bit. Our volunteers are very critical, a good part of how we do things around here. So the dates are in this schedule, and I hope that each of you can join some of the long-term care homes for those dates in your area and support the volunteers on those days. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder for this. By Deputy Warden Coughlin, seconded by Councillor Stavern. that item CCW 2024-090 dated March 26, 2024 regarding Simcoe Strong Volunteer Program be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.3, one-time funding, Behavioral Specialized Unit at Georgian Manor. Question, concerns with this one? Another good report. Can I have a mover second, please? Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Norris. I'm trying to get different people, folks, so I'm trying to. Okay, so that item, CCW 2024-091, dated March 26, 2024, regarding one-time funding, Behavioral Specialized Unit at Georgian Manor, be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.4, long-term care, that's at CCW 2024-092, long-term care digital health updates. Question, concerns with this report? Okay, moved by Councillor Miskinen, seconded by Councillor Measures, that the item CCW 024-092 dated March 26, 2024 regarding long-term care digital health updates be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We are on to 8.5. We have again one CCW 2024-096, 2324, one-time funding for long-term care. Questions, concerns? You can see there's many schedules with this one. Questions, concerns with this? It's all a good news story again. Seeing none. So may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Fallis, seconded by Councillor Ripma, right? All okay. And it is that item CCW, where am I? The item CCW 2024-096 dated March 26, 2024 regarding 2023-24 one-time funding for long-term care be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.6, we have CCW 2024-097 long-term care service accountability agreement, the LSAA updates. Any questions or concerns with this one? It's just an agreement we signed with the province. Okay, moved by. Who have I got here? Let's go on this side. We've got Councillor Lavoie and Councillor Gordon. Seconded. Thank you. Okay, so we have that item CCW 2024-097 dated March 26, 2024 regarding long-term care service accountability agreement be received, and the warden and county clerk execute the extending letter substantially in the form attached as Schedule 2 to item CCW 2024-097, and that the warden and county clerk be authorized to execute amendments to the agreement proposed by Ontario Health, subject to review of the General Manager of Health and Emergency Services, and that no financial commitment is required of the county. All in favor? Thank you. 8.7, CCW 2024-098, Multi-Sectoral Service Accountability Agreement updates. Questions, concerns with this one? Seeing none, can I look to the back here? Councillor Rosen and Councillor LaRose, sorry. That item, CCW 2024-098, dated March 26, 2024, regarding the Multi-Sectoral Accountability Agreement updates be received, and that the warden and county clerk execute the extending letter substantially in the form attached to Schedule 1 to item CCW 2024-098, and that the warden and county clerk execute the declaration of compliance for the corporation of the county of Simcoe as required of the multi-sector service accountability agreement substantially in the form attached as Schedule 2 to item CCW 2024-98, and that the warden and county clerk be authorized to execute amendments to the agreement proposed by Ontario Health, subject to review of the General Manager of Health and Emergency Services, and that no financial commitment is required of the county. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Other matters for consideration. Any other matters for consideration today? Seeing none, thank you, everyone. Warden, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, and I want to thank the city reps. It was a heavy agenda, but all good news stories and pretty self-explanatory. So thank you for coming down. Councillor Cox, yes?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to declare a conflict on 11.2 grant program task force. I applied for a grant on behalf of a committee.
Okay, we will get that separated out when we get to it. And, okay, so just let the city reps. It's not even 9:30, folks, so we'll carry on. And Chair Dolan will take us into waste management. That shouldn't burn up any time, should it?
Thank you, everyone. So that takes us to 11.1, and that would be I'm sorry, that would take us to 10.1. That would be solid waste management bylaw and set fines. Questions or comments on this report? Councillor Leduc.
Yes, thank you. And not a real issue with the report. I'm fine with the report, but I just want to comment, I think, on the fact that it says that the approved containers, and it's a bylaw, they outline the type of approved containers allowed for collection as well as the placement of the carts at the curb 2 feet apart. I'm just wanting to make sure, and I ask Director McCullough or General Manager Elliott, that, you know, I don't want somebody running out there with a tape measure and measuring 24 inches. I hope that we have some flexibility in that comment. It's written in here, but I'm looking to see if we have some definite flexibility. If there's an issue, I'm sure you can deal with it, but I just want to hear that from you, if you don't mind.
GM Elliott?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Leduc. By all means, it's staff's intention to be reasonable. Our approach through the bylaw is about educating the public, not to use a sledgehammer towards them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Van Stavern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In one of the fees, in regards to item 5, set out burning or hot material or set fire to any waste set out for collection. We know a couple months ago we had that fire in a truck on Horseshoe Valley Road, and where they had to dump their load on the road or on the side there. Who is responsible for something like that if it can be proven? Who pays for that?
Through the chair, with me today I've got Laura Barrett and Rob McCullough, who might be best to speak about that particular incident.
Through you, Chair Dolan. That incident was not a County of Simcoe vehicle, so it is not the responsibility of the County of Simcoe. If it was a County of Simcoe vehicle or contracted truck, then the contractor would be responsible for that.
So you're saying if somebody put hot coals or fire ambers or something in the garbage, it gets picked up and causes a fire to start in one of our trucks, they're only responsible for the fine of $150?
Through you, Chair Dolan. Oftentimes that's difficult to prove which resident actually put it in, but that is true. If they do, if we know that it is a resident, then and they do cause that, the set fine through the bylaw is the $150. Yes.
Councillor Van Stavern, you don't look like you're finished yet.
Well, I'm done. I'm not real happy when I hear that because it can cost us thousands of dollars if it can be proven. So I'm not sure in future years that we look at adding an additional line item that if it causes damage, something like that, it should be including the cost out-of-pocket expenses to the county in some form or another. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think note taken. Oh, Mr. McCullough?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The bylaw and the set fines in the bylaw in no way reduces the ability to cover full costs for it through the court system.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Fryer and Councillor Prost. That the item CCW 2024-045, dated March 26, 2024, regarding the solid waste management bylaw and set fines be received, and that bylaw 6256 be repealed, and the new solid waste management bylaw be presented to County Council as outlined in CCW 2024-045, and that staff send the set fines to the Attorney General for approval as generally outlined in item CCW 2024-045. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That is carried. Next, under item 11 is 11.1, the Economic Development Subcommittee report. Any questions or comments on this report? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder for this report, please? Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Fowler. That the recommendations contained within the Economic Development Subcommittee report dated March the 12th, 2024 be approved. All those in favor? Any contrary? That is carried. And finally, item 11.2, the Grant Program Task Force report. Noting that the Councillor Cox has a conflict on this item through the clerk. Any questions or comments on the grant task force report? Seeing none, a mover and a seconder, please, for the report. Councillor McDonald and Councillor Laux, that the recommendations contained within the grant program task force dated March the 18th, 2024 be approved. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any other item matters for consideration for today? Seeing none, I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you.
Warden.
Well, we're making great time. There is a presentation coming under performance management. Again, it's only 9:30, so I'll turn it over to Chair Cox.
Okay, 12.1, 2024 tax ratios and tax rates. I'll hand this over to Trevor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have a number of reports on regarding tax rates and ratios and a couple other matters around rebate programs. With us today is Peter Fries. He's our tax consultant who is the Vice President, Corporate and Client Services at Municipal Tax Equity Consultants. And Peter will conduct a presentation on the matters today. Thank you.
Peter, welcome. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Council. Chair, thanks for having me. I'm going to go through this fairly efficiently. You will notice I'll sort of almost skip over a couple slides that are there to flesh it out. If you were to read it on its own, I won't try not to repeat myself by reading all the slides. There are two parts to this presentation this year, which differs from the past because there are multiple reports. One deals with your annual tax policy setting responsibilities, which affect the tax levy, so tax ratios and classes that you're going to use for this year's taxation program that will support the bills going out and local and county rates being set. The second portion has to do with tax rebate programs that the county has responsibility over setting policy for and establishing the bylaws for. These programs do not affect your annual tax rates or tax levy bylaws. So there are two distinct presentations in one that speak to different staff reports. So on the agenda, there's a report on the annual tax policy, which many of you will be familiar with, and then there's two rebate program reports. So the annual tax discussion, this is the first part, and this is where you're talking about those elements that feed into the tax bills. What the relationship between tax rates are going to be, how the levies changed, what growth is done, if there's been any changes. We are right now in a reassessment pause, which means that we have no market value change on a year-over-year basis. So normally, if we were in a regular cycle, we would be measuring first how the base has changed due to growth, new taxpayers, potential losses, and then we would look at the impacts of those market value changes as they come in on a year-to-year basis. We are only looking at this year. That's not a factor. So the market change isn't a factor. We are dealing with static market values, but that does not mean that you don't have growth. We are still seeing new properties come online as new subdivisions, business properties are built. So everything else is in place. The only thing that we're absent right now is that market value change is not going on. So the first thing we have to do every year is understand how we got from last year's county bylaw to this year's starting point. So we measure growth, and growth is a change in the base. Nothing to do with market value change. It is purely the capacity of the tax base, your taxpayers, their taxable improvements. Unless you expand your boundaries physically, your growth takes the form of improvements. So a new home's built, a factory is reduced in size or torn down. We're always going to have some negative growth to facilitate positive growth. A farm goes away, houses come in, one residential lot goes away and it becomes 10, things like that. So when we look at your growth over 2023 taxation year, so from when the roll was returned to December 31st, and the roll is returned is what you levied your taxes on last year as a starting point, there was 2.53% assessment growth. So assessment growth in the base remains extremely strong in Simcoe County. it continues to grow. You are definitely a growth region. These are high numbers in terms of percentages and dollars. That translates into revenue growth. When we add new properties, you bring in new taxpayers, or at least taxpayers who have expanded their portfolio of accessible improvements. So it increases your taxation capacity. We measure this for the purpose of this discussion on an annualized basis. How much more will your base carry on January 1st, 2024 compared to January 1st, 2023? And that number in county dollars is just over $5 million, or 2.58%. It doesn't align directly with the assessment because not every dollar of assessment is worth the same amount of tax. So that means, and this is a very important number, last year your bylaw raised $196 million. This year the county can raise $201,585,714, and that would affect the 0% tax increase on the county portion of the bill and a 0% tax decrease on all taxpayers. They would essentially, barring any changes to tax ratios or something like that, everybody would pay the same if you raise that much more. So you have an extra $5 million of capacity at the county. And there are obviously corresponding growth within each of your local area municipalities. So when we look at the CVA across the county, it's grown. We have county levy growth and then local levy growth. So every dollar of county levy that increases, you are also increasing your local revenue. It corresponds to that. So these are the numbers in summary. I'm going to go back a little bit to about measuring growth at the end as well. But that's our starting point. From our starting point, we can make some changes. We can adjust things to two things that you can adjust primarily in this current situation. You can adjust your tax policy, which essentially affects the distribution of taxes. So tax ratios tell us how much each class share is. In this very simple illustration, we see that we weight the assessment, and that the weighted share of the assessment, once the ratio is applied, equals the share of tax each class carries. So if we weight farm down, they're going to carry a little less tax than their value share. If we weight commercial up, these aren't your ratios, it's just illustrative. We can, and county council is responsible for making those tax ratio decisions, and they must be made every year, whether you're changing them or not. So in Simcoe County, this is basically what your weighted share, your tax policy does. We have, for example, residential carries 86% of the assessed value of properties, or the estimated value of properties. It carries 88% of the tax levy countywide. Farm carries 5.3. They pick up 1.37% of the tax. So those ratios just allow us to manage the distribution of the burden. And again, those must be set every year. There's been a number of changes over the past in the current era to your tax ratios. Industrial, particularly commercial, and multi-residential have come down over time. There was a planned or a plotted migration of these ratios that came up to 2020. There was some small adjustments in 2021 when some new provincial policies became available, and they've remained static right now. There's no recommendation in that report, and certainly as your outside consultant, we haven't flagged any thing that would cause us to say you should look at this ratio or that ratio. They're very modest, especially for the business classes. It is my opinion that puts Simcoe in a very good circumstance. Your high growth, these are outwardly attractive ratios, but they also give you stability because you're over leveraging some of the more volatile assessment in those business classes. So I think you're well positioned here right now. If you were to move them, we move them within the confines of some pretty strong provincial restrictions, which kind of tell us that pretty much you can only move them down from where you are now. Again, you're really close to having a flat taxation system, which in my opinion is the most stable approach. If we were to move ratios, what it does is it changes that weighting where we saw at the beginning where we were managing that tax, the share of tax. What we would do if you reduce the ratio, it doesn't reduce taxes overall, it just moves them, it changes the share. So very, very simply, if we reduced commercial by 10%, the ratio, we would reduce the commercial share by 9.33% of the county levy. Everybody else would pick that up. So it would move to the other classes equally. The amount of shift you create by a tax ratio change depends on two things: the size of the class before you start and the amount you move the ratio. In this model, we've showed the same, almost identical changes to two different classes. Because the commercial is so much bigger than the industrial, that move would have more impacts than moving the industrial. If you move the industrial, because it's smaller, it would have a lighter impact. So when we move ratios, for example, if somebody was to say, hey, let's drop the commercial ratio, let's be more business friendly, you would want to look at that and say, what's it mean for other taxpayers? Because it's not done in isolation. So again, the report before you doesn't have any recommendations for ratio changes. So we want to go briefly just what it would do if we did. Again, it's a balance thing, not a net gain or loss question. The other decision that municipalities have to make, whether it's in this council or your local council, is where to set your tax rates and how much to levy this year. We do start with your revenue limit or that baseline. So we start from this year's starting point, not from last year's bylaw. This year's revenue neutral levy is $201 almost $0.6 million. A 3.7% levy increase, which is the model here, would be shared equally by all taxpayers. Okay, so everybody would, if this was the levy you ended up with, which is a $7.5 million increase, 3.7%, everybody's county portion of the taxes would increase by exactly 3.7% this year. That would be the county portion of the bill. When we are measuring these, it's really important that we remember that growth component. And this is more important. I've always sort of preached or harped on this, that these are important measures to keep separate. But in an era of high growth and high inflation, where our levy increases are a little higher than we used to have traditionally, these measures are even more important because the overall difference from, say, one bylaw to the other can be bigger. When we had 0.5% of growth and 0.5% of levy increase, if we mixed them up, we weren't skewing things, maybe the message wasn't bad. But when we look at your starting bylaw last year to this model at 3.7%, that is 6.38% difference from last year's bylaw. So if I was a taxpayer or a councillor or a local representative, I'd look at the two bylaws and say, wow, taxes are going up 6.38%. That's a big increase for county taxpayers. That's not what's happening because that growth was carried by new taxpayers only. So despite the 6.38 difference, the increase on existing taxpayers who didn't add property, build a new house, open a new factory last year is 3.7%. So it's really important that this measure, and again, a little bit more explicit about this year and the last couple of years with our clients because these numbers are growing. We are in an era of high growth and high inflation. So they make this separate measurement more important or more material than it used to be. We wouldn't want anybody to think that, for example, spring water, if I'm a taxpayer in spring water, I'm going to pay 9.26% more than I did last year. That's not going to happen. Everything other than the 3.7 was provided by new taxpayers who built new properties. So that's important to, it's really important to keep that in mind. And even the new taxpayers, they would have had a tax bill at the end of last year, December 31st. They're going to pay 3.7 more than their annualized or year-end position from last year. So again, just sort of being a little bit more explicit on this year. And measuring these correctly and remembering that growth is a big part this year of the change from last year's bylaw to this year's bylaw. I'm going to pause there for a moment because the other part of the presentation is sort of a completely separate topic. I'm not sure I can go on, or if the chair feels it's appropriate, if there's any questions on the first part.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Councillor LeBoy.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I just had one question. It's my understanding that many of the aggregate pits were moved from agricultural to industrial. Do you know if that was captured in this ratioing, or is that relevant at this point?
Through you, Chair. Yes, there was growth. Most of that growth actually, it occurred. Some came from farm class to industrial. Some came from residential to industrial. There was a big cleanup on the aggregate properties this year, and that contributed to your significant growth as part of our annual study, which all local staff have. There is a municipality by municipality breakdown of exactly how that contributed to growth. If you were interested in seeing it, that's available to all of your local treasurers. But it was a contributing factor this year.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Duke.
I just wanted to ask a question to either Trevor or Leland. What did we allocate in our 2024 budget for growth? What was the percentage we used in that? I'm sorry, I meant to ask yesterday, but I never got around to it.
Through the chair, 2% was allocated for growth.
Okay, and it came in at 2.5%, so we're ahead of the game on that one. Thanks.
Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Chair. And not specifically about the county, I wanted to just ask briefly about your thoughts in regards to the 4-year delay now in change in assessment CVA. Just trying to get a handle on expectations in your view from what you're hearing, with impact being directed finally by the government to work on initiating something in the near future. It's sure looking more and more like this government's hesitant to make any change at all to the 2016 levels. And in Collingwood's case, there's a bit of a discrepancy. So I understand that it could all be relative, but it's just to try to get a feel if you think there's any chance that this government's going to make a change, and would MPAC be prepared to, say, initiate in 2025, because they'd have to come up with a 2024 valuation in order to be prepared. So just your thoughts on where that all at, I guess, if you could, please.
Through you, Chair. This is only my personal or professional opinion. I am very concerned. I'm increasingly concerned about the pause and reassessment. I can't explain exactly, or I wouldn't want to say exactly why it's happening. There seems to be a fear of it. One thing that we have to keep in mind is that for every dollar of increase, when people's taxes might go up, there's going to be a corresponding dollar of decrease. And what that means is we are getting pent-up tax shifts and pent-up inequities in the system by sticking with those 2016 values. We're also seeing now new subdivisions very difficult for MPAC, and this is not MPAC's issue. It's just a fact. They don't have the information to go back and try to create proper proxy 2016s. So we're seeing all sorts of nefarious effects of this pause. In a municipality like Simcoe, where the value changes are going to be so big, we're just waiting for bigger shifts. I think it's in the municipal and taxpayer interest to move ahead with it. Will MPAC be prepared? I think most likely they're rolling that data forward and just waiting for their instructions, which they don't have. I believe it's political sort of trepidation or fear, or this government's never worked through a reassessment. I don't know that they know what happens and doesn't happen, maybe.
Just to follow up, if I may, Chair, it seems like they've gotten so far away from doing it now into the 4th year that everybody's anxious about doing it, and usually that means that they'll figure delays easier. So just wanted your personal opinion and appreciate that information. Thank you.
Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer asked some of my question, but I recall the day when assessments were all over the map, where municipalities were going off assessments in the 50s, and so we kind of righted that ship and got everybody on track in the regular 4-year. I totally understand why in 2020 Minister Clark paused that, because I just think it makes sense at that time, right during the pandemic. But I agree now that I think it's that fear and somewhat just not understanding. So I know with my own residents, when they get their assessment, if it is an assessment year in 2016, they get their assessment and they think because their property value doubled that their taxes were going to double. And just pushing out that MPAC has a wonderful video on their website that kind of explains assessment, and just pushing that out, because I think at the cabinet table we could push out that education as well. And I understand the trepidation, especially going into election and causing a large shift one way or the other. I agree that we should be holding it steady at this time, because I think that in 2016, we were pushed, there was a lot of pressure from the farming community to reduce the 0.25 on farms because there was an impact on them. But I think whenever the government, this or the next government, decides to go back to reassessment, there might be some big winners and losers that we need to mitigate. Or what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a tool that should be used to mitigate big winners and losers in a reassessment after there hasn't been one in 8-10 years?
Through you, Chair. My concern is that we don't have the actual tools to manage the kind of reassessment that we are going to have. That we need to look at our local circumstances, as I'm not a municipality, but I'll use that term, and say what do we need, and make sure the province knows we can't do what we did in '98, and you guys come up with a solution for Toronto and paste it on all of us that doesn't work in Simcoe or Wawa or Red Lake or Thunder Bay. I know that we are in a better position than we were 2 years ago. We have been doing sales analysis and market analysis in Simcoe, which unfortunately, MPAC's not allowed to do that for you, but we can. And things have smoothed out. Tax shifts, without getting too technical, tax shifts and reassessment are driven by the diversity in change. So how different the change is, how much people deviate from the overall. Your overall has come together. Your sales analysis, particularly in residential, is showing a tighter pattern now. So your lower value properties were way over. We all know that housing was this boom, not the second home or the waterfront. So townhomes, smaller single detached condos went way up. They are the ones that have settled down, plus the market has picked up on higher value homes. So reassessment would be smoother today on a Jan 1, 2024 than it would have been on a Jan 1, 2022. Much smoother in Simcoe County. Now is the time.
So we should be pushing the government for reassessment. So where we've always seen kind of the big shifts is the shoreline. Are you doing any analysis on shoreline? And
we haven't updated our detailed dig-in analysis. We did a light pass for a countywide staff training a little while ago, where it showed us those broad patterns. My gut feel is that we won't see the shift onto waterfront this time and onto, say, the estate homes and things. We did in the last reassessment because it was a boom economy. The real estate boom, the last one, was about upgrading. This real estate boom's about housing. And do we have the tools to manage that?
one final, if I might, Chair Cox, and that is this House was pretty deliberate in lowering the industrial. Can we take any credit for that 10.79 increase in industrial, or was that just a fluke?
Through you, Chair, I think that's a combination of things. You serviced a lot of new industrial land, and at the time, the kind of logic was, let's lower the ratio to help make this investment attractive to outside parties, but also when you have growth in a class, it's easier to move the ratio before you get that growth, because if you get it, then you want to move it. It's just harder to move off. So the council of the day made sort of a decision. I think that your industrial growth is fantastic, because that is a declining, and it's going to bolster some of your commercial that may be softer in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, then Councillor Duke.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Mr. Freeze, thanks very much for coming in today. Great presentation. 2 points that I have. First of all, will you do this on an individual municipality or city basis? This is something that my residents, and I think a lot of people in our community, really don't understand. And to understand the impacts that these different categories have within our communities and the tax rates that go along with it. I know you mentioned farm is really the only one that people really know about, but love the opportunity for you to come in speak in our municipality. I'm sure that people would as well. My main question, though, is with regards to other municipalities and tax rates and ratios, how we compare throughout Ontario, and how do we, especially we're just talking about industrial and the need to attract industry and the balance between being low cost and also making money. So rather than give away 40%, how do we give away maybe 5% and still get the business and capture that difference? So is that ever taken into context or consideration in comparison Simcoe versus, say, Peel or Halton, or just an example, or throughout Ontario? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. In those years where Council was considering actual reductions and changes, absolutely, that comparative information was brought forward. I can say generally, Simcoe County has very low, modest ratios that look great. There is another real benefit that Simcoe County has enjoyed because of those lower ratios. When we tax certain properties higher, we enjoy, maybe it looks better for residential when we pass the bylaw, but we know in reality we have appeals, we have shutdowns, we have classes that soften or go away. With all the supermarkets or the automotive plant go down. With low ratios, your risk and then your volatility and the feedback onto residential class is minimal. So it serves you well, and I believe they are competitive. We could always do a comparison, and the county does, to your first question, conduct or have us conduct this detailed analysis at the county level and for every single local area municipality annually. So we could definitely speak to, we have the data and the information and the analysis all ready to go. We could speak at your local council.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Freeze. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question. I don't know if it pertains to anything, but we had a slide up there that showed 88% residential tax rate. We had industrial, commercial, I think a little bit below when you add them up, 10%. What's a good ratio out there when it comes to other areas? We always want to reduce our residential burden down and share that. In a community, you want a 70-30 split. With a region like this, what would be a good number? What's out there?
Through you, Chair, that's a really not a question I could answer off the cuff. I mean, part of that is how much you leverage what you have. So, I mean, it's great to say I'd love 30% industrial, but if you don't have, I don't know, the industrial manufacturer come and plunk a factory down here, you don't have it. It's more about managing the balance of what you have, that we don't over leverage anything too much. That's my philosophy, that if we have municipalities that have 5% industrial and they make up 15% of the levy, that becomes worrisome, because if that mill or the plant shuts, huge implications, sort of the slingshot side of things. So,
any more questions? Yes, Councillor Hanlon.
Hi, thank you. My question is also about the impacts of reassessment. And what keeps me up at night is, I think, one thing that you mentioned, that the newer properties are being assessed much higher than the older properties. And I can see in our community, sometimes houses that are selling, I'll say, for the same value, the taxes on the newer property are twice as much. Like, it's significant. So I recognize that if MPAC reassesses all the properties correctly, there could be huge shifts in our single-family home, base. And I know that, other shifts are going to be happening, not just in the single-family home sector. The more reassessments delayed, the more shifts we're going to see. So where I'm coming from here is during the last major shift in '98, when they updated values by decades, there was a very complex system of phasing in of tax increases that, I wasn't part of the municipal governing sector at that time, but from the private sector side, there were huge errors everywhere because it was so complicated. The municipal staff, nobody could figure it out. It was unbelievable. And what I think back now, and I wonder how that impacted on municipal tax revenues, not knowing, every week whether there'd be another $1 million coming off the budget because of the phase-in issues. So my bottom line is, as soon as we know when the reassessment's going to be, and you're obviously working along in the value shifts right now, it would be really helpful, I think, if there was some discussion at this council about whether we should be making, I'll call it a made in Simcoe solution to phase in to the province. So we don't just get the Toronto solution, if ours should be different. And I can't say if it should be or not, but I'm just worried about the phase in impact on our taxpayers. So thank you.
Through you, Chair. To my earlier point, I think that municipalities, especially ones that may be more volatile, should be absolutely determining for themselves what is going to be right for Simcoe, so you don't get painted with a broad brush. In terms of revenue mitigation strategy, should be revenue neutral generally. The one you're speaking about, capping, was very similar to what we're in now. They had to withhold decreases to protect people from increases. The policymakers only looked at the increases. Nobody talked about the fact that if I was a commercial taxpayer, I might have waited from 1998 to 2020, 2019 for the tax decrease I should have gotten in 98. And that inequities are what's growing now that concern me most.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Gordon.
I don't know if it's a question so much as a forecast. One of the things we found back in 2016 was, for example, in our community, our big box stores almost unanimously went and challenged their assessments and won. And it was leapfrog. It's all like they were in a room after and explaining how they did it. And that has a really negative impact on our residential taxes. So, there was some pushback. Of course, these guys are making record profits, and yet now they want to pay even less tax. And their argument that they're, big employers in town is, goes over lukewarm because of the, what they pay them and the way they keep everybody part-time and low benefits, no unions, etc. I'm just wondering if when the government finally decides to release the hounds, and I think that this is a case of analysis paralysis, like everyone's just afraid to blink and do it. They just need to do it, and they're midterm. So if they're going to make decisions that are going to cause flap, this is the time to do it, not in election year. So in my mind, it would make perfect sense for them to basically get off the pot and announce that there's going to be a phased in, as impact works anyway, for 2026. So everybody knows it's coming. But I guess my concern is there anything new coming down the pipes that'll help MPAC hold its ground on the assessment of, the big box stores and that kind of commercial? Have you heard any rumblings that this has negatively impacted many communities? I can only imagine ones far larger than mine are impacted even greater when, they all band together and challenge their assessments.
Through you, Mayor, appeal losses have traditionally been an incredible challenge in Ontario, more so than anywhere. All we can hope is that MPAC gets solid values when they do reassess that can be defended.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick sum up. We will get a copy of this deputation sent out to all the councillors, so you have it.
Okay, if there was no more, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just finally, quickly to Councillor Gordon, it's not without lack of trying. So AMO's been pushing and pushing and pushing for reassessment since about 2022. So, you know, there certainly is a lot of people trying, and the current chair of MPAC used to be the mayor of Kapuskasing, whose largest employer and largest industrial ratepayer, a pulp and paper mill, appealed their MPAC assessment, and it caused a huge tax shift in Timmins, probably, or sorry, in Kapuskasing, probably why he ran for the MPAC board. So, yeah, they are working hard. They want to do a reassessment as well. So we'll just keep pushing in that direction.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'd like a mover and a seconder for 12.1, please. Moved by Councillor Fryer, second by Councillor Dolan, that item CCW 2024-053, dated March 26, 2024, regarding 2024 tax ratios and tax rate be received, and that subject to the deliberations in the affirmative, the 2024 tax ratios and the tax rate reduction for 2024 as generally outlined in the subject item be approved, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to adopt the 2024 tax ratios and rates as generally outlined in item CCW 2024-053. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we'll go to, yeah, 12. Yeah, it's part 2, but it's another motion, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So now we'll go to 12.2, eligible charities property tax rebate program.
Cool. Yep. Thank you. So I'm going to talk briefly about 2 rebate programs that the county is responsible. These are related to property tax, but don't affect the rates or the levies. The first one is property tax rebates for registered charities. Local municipalities administer these, but it is the upper tier of the county bylaw responsibility to set a bylaw to structure the program. Eligible charity is, as it sounds, a charity that is actually a registered charity under the Income Tax Act. And an eligible property under the default program is a property that falls into the commercial or industrial class and is occupied by an eligible charity. And the rebate amount for those property taxes is 40%. That's the default. It's the actual property taxes if I own my property, or it is the amount paid on account of taxes if I'm a charity and I am a tenant in a commercial or industrial property. The cost of these rebates is shared proportionally by the local municipality, the school board, and the upper tier. So when the local municipality provides the rebate, they take the exact portion of that rebate that was driven by the county rate and the school rate, and they charge those back at the end of the year. The default program is consistent with current practice in Simcoe County. The Act does allow for modifications. If you had reason to bring those in, you could extend the program to other organizations that are considered similar. That one needs to be done with extreme care. You can designate other property classes other than industrial and commercial, but the idea is that it almost offsets those higher business rate. It dates back to the business occupancy tax, and you could set different percentages for different properties. This report is being brought forward because the bylaw really needs a technical update. It needs to be brought up to the current language. The report before you doesn't recommend any changes. It's the default program that you must provide under the Act. That's all the bylaw. That's all the bylaw and the report do. So that's it.
Are there any questions or comments on this motion? Presentation? Okay. Go ahead. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Locke, that recommendation, the item CCW 2024-083, dated March 26, 2024, regarding the rebate of property taxes or amounts paid on the account of property taxes for eligible charities be received, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to repeal bylaw 6104 and provide for an eligible charities property tax rebate program as generally outlined in item CCW 2024-083. All in favor? Okay, now we will go into 12.3, low-income seniors and persons with disabilities tax relief.
Yes, this is another rebate program that's administered locally that is set by a mandatory upper tier county bylaw. You must have a program in place to provide relief under this section. Now, Section 319 provides for relief of tax increases only. So how much did my taxes on my home change from last year to this year? That is the eligible amount. We can't set flat amounts. We can't provide more than that if a taxpayer's property, even if they're an eligible taxpayer, if the taxes go down, there's no relief. It's a very restricted program, but it is mandatory. They do vary by jurisdiction. There's a few things that you have to establish in your bylaw. Eligible persons, eligible property, eligible amounts in the form of relief. Eligible property and the eligible amounts are fixed. That's residential property, and the eligible amounts are just as I described. So it is, we want to keep in mind, it is not a huge program. It's not, doesn't convey massive relief to eligible persons. You have to define low-income senior or low-income persons with disabilities. Our recommendation, and what most municipalities, whether certainly that we work with, and if you look at bylaws from across the province, this is done by leveraging other means testing, external means testing. You don't want to bring all your taxpayers in and try to figure out if they're eligible. They generally, these programs leverage other programs. So if a senior is on the guaranteed income supplement from the federal government has done that means testing and income testing. It is just an indicator that they fall into that low-income seniors. Similarly, a low-income persons with disabilities, if they are receiving certain provincial fundings, then their income has been tested. It would be, finance staff in particular are not trained or equipped to do. And we also don't want to ask people to bring in personal information and income statements and all those types of things. The recommendation is that we identify low-income people by external measures, which this is 65 years of age and older, receiving federal guaranteed income supplement or payment under Ontario Works, and then low-income persons with disability. No age restriction on that. Eligible amounts, again, there's the increase, just to give you an idea of what this would mean. In 2023, so between 2022 and 2023, these were the numbers we had when we did this calculation, the average single detached residential saw a net total overall $178 increase. So that's the average property. That's being pulled up by very expensive properties and pulled down by lower value properties. That's the average change. So if you were an eligible person, that would be the total amount of relief if you were in that average property. Generally, we're going to see that when we have looked at this in the past, we are falling, eligible persons are coming in at lower value properties that don't come in around the average. But you don't know until you get your applications. Your big decision really is the form of relief. And the form of relief can be done in two ways. One, it can be a deferral of the taxes. And two, it can be a cancellation. Deferral is what your current bylaw does now. It's an awkward thing. You don't have any active deferrals right now across the county for a few reasons. A deferral is not an attractive proposition for a taxpayer because it represents a priority tax lien on their home. Whether you actively register or not, financial institutions, banks see that. I defer $100, all of a sudden I can't take out a mortgage or a line of credit or a reverse mortgage on my home because the bank says that's against our rules. We can't stand in priority behind anybody else if we're going to secure your home. So that's one of the big common reasons that municipalities have traditionally gone with the cancellation approach, and because also the intensity of the work. If I defer $100 as staff, I have to track that and bank it with the school boards and the counties over time. I mean, I've used up that $100 in staff time very, very quickly to administer that deferral over time. And then I have to make sure that if that property changes hands, I'm getting it put back, collected and things like that. So a lot of municipalities, a lot of counties, we know that there's nothing bigger on the radar right now than housing. We've seen a lot of counties update their bylaw over the past few years. Everybody that we've worked with has moved to a cancellation model. When you do a cancellation model, sorry, I jumped ahead. So your current program right now, you have a deferral, theoretically, but you have a threshold, and it's a lower threshold. So your taxes have to increase by $300. So that average property taxpayer wouldn't even be eligible for $178 under the current bylaw. You would give them no relief. They would have to go up by $300 or more, and then you would give them $50, say if they went up $350. There's nobody identified any participation in this program, this is not an uncommon approach. This was a common bylaw that was circulated 10, 12 years ago. A lot of municipalities did it. There is a question whether that approach meets the spirit and intent of the legislation, because what the Act says is you must provide relief for some or all of the eligible increase. It may be viewed that if the threshold is $350 and my increase was $178, that the program doesn't provide me relief for some or all. It's none of my increase. It's only some of an increase. So a lot of people are taking a second look at that, although it was fairly common language. These things sort of perpetuate themselves. The current recommended staff recommendation, this was done, there was a lot of discussion, consultation, and with the local finance staff, is to change this from a deferral to a cancellation and cap it at $250. So put the threshold on the top, not the bottom. So the maximum relief would be $250. That would mean if you had a $100 increase, you get a $100 rebate. If you had a $300 increase, you get a $250 rebate. Some or all of the eligible increase, the eligible persons as discussed, and those rebates are shared proportionally again with the school board and the upper tier and the local. It's unlike the charity. It is a bit of a change to the program, but that is what is in the staff report currently.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any comments or questions? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, and through the chair. So that would be administered by the local municipality and then the lower tier municipality finance department, but following the county bylaw. Yes. Just clarification. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Duke, second by Deputy Warden Coghlan, that item CCW 2024-087 dated March 26, 2024 regarding low-income seniors and persons with disabilities tax relief be received, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to repeal bylaw 5022 and provide for low-income seniors and persons with disabilities tax relief as generally outlined in item CCW 2024-087. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to 12.4, municipal insurance pool. Did anyone want to speak to this before? Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to do a bit of an intro on this one. This is a great news report. We've done the feasibility study for the insurance pool, which included participation from all member municipalities, plus the County of Simcoe, plus the City of Orillia. It looked at the current amount of insurances that were being paid, the different classifications, and our consultant did an analysis of that and has come up with very favorable results. In fact, so favorable that they feel there could be a savings in year one, which is very unusual for this kind of evaluation. And then certainly an ongoing reduction in costs to municipalities. But I just want to emphasize that it's more than just the dollar amounts. This is a long-term initiative where the key is to provide stability to premiums, to provide the ability to use increased buying power to ultimately have those stable premiums and ultimately lower premiums, to spread that risk across other municipalities, and also to gain greater control of your insurance. So through that feasibility, it shows that this is something that could benefit all of us. The more of us that participate, potentially the greater the benefit, of course. So what we'd like to do as staff, we'd like to move to the next phase, which is looking at an implementation plan. The implementation plan would outline all the details, each municipality, what the impact would be, what this would look like, staffing for this, because essentially we have to operate a pool. The pool then allows us to, as I said, share our buying power, and ultimately we buy less insurance overall than we're buying now. So that's what we'd like to do. I want to caution a couple of things, because I've received a couple of emails with questions about what does it mean for me. That is a natural question, and we will address that. Our consultants will be looking at municipality by municipality what that means for each of you. But also, I would not be surprised if your insurance renewals come in pretty competitive this year, because they have all heard that we are looking at this. And I've already heard one comment that, oh, well, we're not getting any real increase this year. That's short-term thinking. You've got to be very cautious of that. If you do get those kind of comments, please ask about the trend that's happened over the last 5 to 10 years. You'll see we've all had to deal with significant jumps in a number of areas. We've had to deal with cancellation of insurance, for example, for cyber insurance. So whether we like it or not, we're in a pool. When we're buying insurance, we're in this big pool with all the other municipalities. What this allows us to do is take a lot more control in the pool that we manage. So with that, the report is asking that we move forward with the the implementation plan. We're asking for a budget of $200,000 for that. A bunch of that will be paid for the consultant to do their work, but I think it'll more than pay for itself in the end. And then we will come back along the way to let you know how things are going, but we will be connected with your staff along the way. We've done it so far in the feasibility. We will do it with the implementation plan as well. I know there's going to be lots of questions as we move along, but that's what we're going to take. We're going to take about the next 6 to 8 months to pull that together, and then we'll come back. And then we'll ask for a commitment to move forward. And our consultants, just so you know, we will flesh this out in the implementation plan. The key is to have a commitment. So likelihood is that we will ask for a 5-year commitment to join this. And so municipalities will commit to stay in, or you will not be able to join for 5 years. So it's not like you can play a wait-and-see game to sit on the sideline for this. We need commitment, and it takes that time to really show the benefits of the pool. So that's around the timing that most pools implement. And then it's actually up to the pool as a collective, because this will be, as a typical example in Waterloo, it's the treasurers that make up the board of the pool. It'll be up to the pool whether they have any other entrants come in later on. So we will encourage you to think carefully about if you're not considering going in, because there may be a possibility that you will never be able to get into the pool, because that is up to the pool members. With that, I'm happy to entertain any questions, but again, we will be coming to your individual councils. I've encourage your staff to pass along this information to all of your council so that everybody can be aware of where we're at, and then we will move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brian Smith, then Councillor Fryer. And you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I just want to say that I was very happy to see this come forward again, and I commend staff for their forward thinking, which we see on a regular basis with our staff here at the county. But this is a very important issue for all of us, and this is not going to get better. And to Trevor's point, you know, short-sightedness is not going to work here. What we all know is that insurance companies are not our friends, although they like us to believe they are when we sign our checks over to them. But we need to find a solution to this. This is not going to get better. It's going to get much worse, in my opinion, and so I look forward to moving this forward, and I support staff on this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Chair, and appreciate the update from staff. I've expressed my support for this right from the outset. With my background, having been in the public utilities sector, I was involved in the initiation of the MIRI, the reciprocal exchange that was put in place well over 30 years probably now, and tremendously successful. I think the other thing that it'll do, and I know the 5 years is a scary thought. It'll be to some councillors, and I fully agree with you, we need to really educate our municipal councils about that, because there was that situation where for those 5 years, the ones who had opted not to come in couldn't come in because of the fact that phase had been set. But the other thing it really did was put some consistency to the numbers across the board. When you're working directly with your insurer and you're valuing things, and then you find out that it's valued a whole lot different at another location, that was troubling. But that consistency came through as MIRI developed, and it's been tremendously successful. So I'll be bringing this forward to our council and definitely supportive of it, and appreciate the effort by staff in that regard. Thank you.
Councillor Duke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to say thank you to Trevor for the update on this. And I tell you, the key there was the word control, and it was we get to control our costs. And I'll tell you, we were looking at a police service budget just recently, and we were in the middle of it, and we were just about ready to approve the budget. And next thing you know, the police said to us, we just got our insurance in, and it's a 15% increase, and we had to go back to that budget and redo it based on that. I know back in Bradford, and I fully support this report. I want to move forward with this. I think pooling of insurance is really the key now out there. You can see Waterloo's doing it, Durham. They're finding savings. I think this is something that we all should support. The 5-year commitment to me is not a big one, because I can tell you, just before the pandemic, Bradford got a great insurance. We got $1.2 million of savings, and every year I was lucky we put it in reserve, because every year after it's increased, and it's above what we saved back then. So that insurance is very cyclic. We go up and down with those costs, so this will flatten our costs out. The joy of this is that we actually see a savings. I didn't think we would see a savings right away, but it looks like we're seeing a savings in the future. So to me, you can guarantee that you have to look at this very seriously, and I think it's an opportunity. If we don't, and I think what Trevor said, if you don't get in now, you might never get in it. So I suggest that we all take a very serious look at this and talk to our treasurers to see about that, because I am 100% in support of this report, and I think insurance pooling is the way to go. So my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Dolan.
Thank you. I can just say ditto, but I'll add that I learned last week that State Farm Insurance in the state of California has stopped insuring residential homes. So we in Innisfil lost our cyber security insurance, and I know a lot of municipalities have. So I do support this, and I think it's definitely worth the $200,000 for the implementation funding. I'll also go back to what GM Wilcox said about watch out for undercutting. Many years ago, Ontario municipalities had a company called OMEX, or was a cooperative called OMEX, Ontario Municipal Insurance Cooperative, and how the insurance companies got rid of them is they each undercut the price from OMEX by a little bit. So municipalities bailed on the cooperative and went back to the insurance companies. OMEX folded, and we all know what's happened since then. So, you know, if your insurance company does undercut just by a bit, remember the days that they came in with double-digit increases and reduced your coverage, and make your decision based on the long-term thinking that GM Wilcox has said. My one comment would be to Jim Wilcox, so after the 5 years, is the opportunity, because I know that there's other entities looking at pools that may be larger than this, is there the opportunity at that point for our pool to say it would be advantageous or not advantageous to join a different pool?
Through the chair, that would be possible. It would be up to the members of the pool and the board of the pool to direct that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miniskin.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, echoing everything that's been said so far, we've all experienced the double-digit increases in our insurance costs over the past few years. And I want to thank staff for putting together this report. I think pooling is a brilliant idea. This is a long game, and we all have to be committed to it. At the end of the day, I think this is a prime example of the value that an upper-tier region plays in offsetting the costs, our collective costs, to the taxpayers for 16 municipalities and 2 separated cities. So I think we should all be encouraging our own councils as we go back to adopt this commitment of 5 years, because I think at the end of the day, any savings from an insurance company, and we've all dealt with joint and severed liability as well, which you know, further escalates the underwriting costs that we all experience. So anything we can do to pool that, and I love the idea of potentially pooling with another region. Anything we can do to save money for the taxpayer at the end of the day is worthwhile investment of not only resources but also our commitment of time. Thank you.
And Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. At the risk of, you know, echoing what everyone else says, I agree with all of that. I'm just thinking, are we maybe not, we're thinking too, too macro on this. I definitely don't argue against doing this. I think it's great. There's power in group purchasing. We see that with our procurement and other things that we do through the county. But, there's a lot of power in all these municipalities. If the AMO got behind this and we negotiated through the AMO for a vendor of record for 5-year terms, I think we could all collectively, like in the province, we would find these companies tripping over themselves for that kind of business. So that's my one observation. Has this gone up the pipe, and is it being talked about at the AMO? I mean, wouldn't want to pump the brakes on our initiative as a proof of concept, but this could be really, really big. And, we could bring the big insurers who could just offer these preferred rates to our municipalities. The second thing is, much like the cell phone deals that we get, if it's TELUS or Bell or Rogers, whoever's doing the deal for the county right now, typically they offer special packages to the staff, right, and employees. So it's not just, for council or it extends and even to family members. So I'm wondering, if as part of this, if part of our bargaining power is we could extend preferred rates to our residents in our communities through this collective bargaining that we're effectively going to do for our insurance, and providing preferred rates to members of our community. I'm thinking specifically of marginalized, the tenants who right now who are, one fire or one flood away from losing everything, have no tenants insurance. The premium on that is, almost inconsequential to most of us with a steady paycheck. But there are a lot of people, and we've just learned this in our community with a couple that were burned out of their home of 30 years, have no insurance. So, if the municipality and collectively through the county negotiated preferred rates, then we could extend that offer to some of the most marginal folks in our community. I can afford to go shop around for whatever insurance I want for my house, but there's a lot of people that couldn't for their apartments. So I'm just wondering, could we broaden the scope of this a little bit and look at passing that value along to our residents, even if it was limited in scope to things like a preferred deal on renters insurance, for example?
Thank you. I just want to comment, too, that GM Wilcox is the Secretary-Treasurer of AMO, so if there was a conduit, it would be him and Councillor Dolan. Did you want to speak to that? Thank you.
Sure, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much for the point. And I think what you're raising is the collective buying power ability in certain things. A couple of points on that, and I don't want to dissuade that. The insurance pool concept that I'm talking about here and that we're specifically addressing is for municipalities which have specific insurance needs that are quite different than your average resident. So just to caution you on that. However, happy to take that away and look at how we can potentially look at buying power for that kind of thing. The other point I'd make is related to AMO, and LAS is the arm that looks at trying to leverage buying power for a number of different things that we have. One of them could be insurance in terms of that kind of thing, but they are looking at those things where they can do that. One of the things they're addressing now is our lack of cyber insurance, so they're looking at that in terms of exactly what they can do in terms of assisting in that area. I can take that back as well and provide feedback in terms of that. There.
Okay, Councillor Hanlon.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question, and it is through you. I've noticed our municipality, if I'm reading things correctly, is self-funding insurance for the WSIB. And I'm just wondering if that is something that staff here have ever looked at. Thank you. Like whether it could be a pooling as well. Thank you.
Through the chair, no, we have not looked at that specifically in terms of WSIB. I'll take that away and see what that could be looked at. Mina did point out that tenant insurance was another item that we do look at through our social housing. So I don't know if you want to make a point on that, Mina. That is something we look at all the time.
Yeah, through the chair, really quickly to Councillor Gordon's comment. So we consistently, not only for tenants that we directly operate, but also tenancies that are third-party operated, like nonprofits, we consistently offer group buy purchasing opportunities through the Housing Services Corporation, which is a Crown Corporation that sells insurance for low-income tenants as well. So we do try as best as we can in the same idea, use our buying power and pass that on to clients. And I think it's $20 a month or something like that for full coverage. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? I think we agree that it sounds to me like we'll take the vote and then we agree that we look at, you come back with some ideas and we can all see where we're at before we start going too far afield. So I will ask for a mover and a seconder for 12.4. Moved by Councillor Smith, second by Councillor Rawson, that item CCW 2024-088 dated March 26, 2024 regarding the municipal insurance pool be received, and that the financial support for the next phase of the analysis, implementation of an insurance pool as outlined in item CCW 2024-088 be approved. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Now moving on to 13.1, electric vehicle charging station funding. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Measures, second by Councillor Fowler. Any comments? Councillor Leduc.
I just wanted to ask a quick question on it. The 3 locations we're doing, 2 of them are fast charging stations and 1 is a level 2. So I'm not sure what that means. I apologize for not asking prior, but just wondered if we could get an answer on the difference of those and why. Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay.
Through the chair, I'll just wait for staff to get in place. But the difference between level 2 and level 3 charging is the speed at which you can charge. A level 3 charging station can charge a battery full in a half an hour-ish or even less. It's as close as they have right now to filling a tank of gas at a gas station. So you could go in for a coffee and come out and your car would be charged. A level 2 is less. It's more for, you would have that at your residence. It's overnight charging if you wanted to fully charge, but it still adds a fair amount of charge to your battery over a number of hours. I will ask, I've got Catherine Payne, who's our manager of procurement and sustainable operations, to comment, but I'm assuming in one of them we couldn't get the electrical connection for a level 3 because it does take more power to operate a level 3 charger.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Chair.
At the Bradford station, I believe we do have some power constraints, and therefore we're installing a level 2. And at the other 2 locations, we have level 3s, and that allows fast charging in those corridors where there's lots of commuting.
Thank you.
No, okay, thank you very much. I need to understand that. That's great. On to Trevor's comment about going for a coffee. If I'm going to the gas station, fill up my car, I can't afford that coffee anymore.
Drink the one you brought in your car. Any more questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Performance management, any other matters for consideration? Seeing none, thank you. Okay. 14.1, I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Cabral, seconded by Councillor Fryer, that the recommendation contained within the Joint Accessible Advisory Committee report dated March 19th, 2024 be approved. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cox. And now we'll look, there's no closed session, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by the Deputy Warden. All in favor that we adjourn the, well, I should read the motion, I guess. That we adjourn the March 26th, 2024 meeting of the Committee of the Whole at 10:43. So there will be buses waiting out in the atrium to take us to the groundbreaking at 11 o'clock. So
how long would it be? Because there's some people who have to leave, so they would probably.
Maybe call in. How long will we be there? Do you know? Fairly quick, be a couple bus loads to get us all over there. So.
An hour?
Yeah, an hour from now. So are the buses out there now, Colin? Yeah, so we can head over shortly.
I'm sorry, I can't go.